If you want to truly transform your life and understand how everything you experience starts from the inside out, you've come to the right place. Here, we'll explore together how your thoughts, beliefs, and emotions powerfully shape your reality, and how you can use this to your advantage to create a fulfilling and purposeful life. Before continuing, take the opportunity to like the video, leave a comment with your experiences or questions, and of course, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any content that will help you awaken your full potential. Are we going to join us on this journey of inner transformation? Then come with me. Faith is often associated solely with the religious field, as if it were a belief restricted to the divine, dogmas, or spiritual practices. However, faith goes far beyond this. It is a creative force, a principle that acts directly in the construction of the reality of any person, regardless of the religion they profess, or even if they have no religion at all. Faith, in this deeper sense, is the unshakable conviction that something is possible, even when there is no immediate material evidence. It is the ability to see in the invisible that which has not yet manifested itself in the visible, but which is already real within the mind and heart. This force is not mystical in the fanciful sense of the word, but profoundly concrete in practical life. It shapes behaviors, directs choices, influences emotions, and, most importantly, activates the creative capacity that exists within every human being. When someone genuinely believes in something, this belief mobilizes not only their thoughts, but also their emotions, their energy, and their entire body towards the realization of what they believe in. The mind begins to work on finding solutions, emotions align with desire, and the body responds with coherent actions. Faith, therefore, is a transformative agent that begins within but generates results outside. All of humanity's greatest achievements were born from an act of faith. Before any airplane could fly, someone had to believe that it was possible to defy gravity. Before any company was created, an entrepreneur had to believe in something that did not yet exist. And before any healing, reconciliation, achievement, or transformation, someone had to nurture within themselves the conviction that the impossible was, in fact, possible. This does not mean ignoring reality, but refusing to accept that it is definitive. Having faith is understanding that the current reality is just a provisional snapshot of life, and that it can be changed by the power of belief combined with action. This force does not operate automatically. It responds directly to what we feed within ourselves. If a person believes in failure, scarcity, illness, or rejection, their life will unconsciously organize itself to confirm these beliefs. Thoughts generate feelings, which generate attitudes, which build results. Therefore, faith is not necessarily always positive. It is a neutral energy that is oriented according to the direction of dominant thoughts. Those who believe they will fail unconsciously sabotage themselves, create blocks, and attract situations that confirm this conviction. In the same way, those who believe in success, prosperity, love, and overcoming condition their nervous system, their emotional field, and their decisions to build this path. When we look at the sacred texts, we realize that they speak of faith not only as a religious act, but as a universal law. "All things are possible to him that believeth," said Jesus. This was not restricted to the religious environment, but rather as a statement about the workings of life. Napoleon Hill, researching the greatest millionaires and achievers of his time, also came to the same conclusion: whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve. This shows that faith is a common element between spirituality, personal development, entrepreneurship, and human transformation. It is a key that opens doors in the invisible, so that they materialize in the visible. It is important to understand that faith is not about waiting idly for something to happen. Faith is not about being passive. It is not about waiting for an external force to solve our problems while we do not do our part. On the contrary, true faith is deeply active. It moves, drives, generates courage, resilience, and strength to face challenges. It makes a person act as if what they desire is already a reality, even before any external sign. This type of internal positioning generates a vibration, an energetic frequency that communicates with the circumstances of life, reorganizing events, attracting opportunities, awakening talents, provoking encounters, and designing solutions that previously seemed impossible. In practice, activating faith as a creative force is a daily exercise. It is necessary to reprogram one's thoughts, because the mind has the habit of fixating on fear, doubt, and insecurity. It is necessary to learn to replace negative internal dialogues with constructive affirmations, constantly visualize what one desires, feel the emotion of achievement as if it were already happening, and act, even without guarantees, in the direction of one's dreams. This is not self-deception, but mental and emotional training, which aligns the human being with the creative flow of life. Another essential point is to protect yourself from the influence of environments and people that reinforce disbelief, fear, and mediocrity. Creative faith requires a fertile environment, both internal and external. Therefore, it is essential to carefully select the content you consume, the thoughts you entertain, and the conversations you allow yourself to participate in. Surrounding yourself with people who also believe in the possibility of expansion, evolution, and achievement strengthens your own creative energy. Life is largely a reflection of what we believe. No one lives beyond the limits of their own beliefs. Expanding faith means expanding possibilities. It means leaving the cycle of scarcity, limitation, and victimhood and entering the cycle of conscious creation, where challenges cease to be walls and become steps. Everything begins in the invisible, in the realm of imagination, belief, and intention. This then manifests itself in the physical world, through choices, behaviors, and results. Faith, in this sense, is not just a spiritual issue, but an internal technology, a tool for building life, accessible to anyone willing to take control of their own existence. The reality that each person experiences is, to a large extent, a reflection of what they carry within themselves. Faith, understood here not only in the religious sense, but as a deep conviction, exerts a direct influence on the events, choices, and results of life. Everything that one believes consistently shapes the way one sees the world, how one reacts to situations, and even how one interprets challenges. The human mind works like a filter, which organizes the perception of reality according to the predominant beliefs that have been formed throughout life. When someone believes that they are capable, that they are worthy, that life can be prosperous, full of love, health, and growth, this belief creates an internal disposition that drives behaviors consistent with this state. The person positions themselves in the world with more confidence, perceives more opportunities, attracts favorable situations, and, even when faced with difficulties, maintains an attitude of resilience and overcoming. This disposition is not magic, but the result of a mind trained to seek solutions, a heart open to receive, and a determined will to transform dreams into reality. On the other hand, when internal faith is based on fear, insecurity, doubt, or the belief that nothing works, this is also reflected in the external world. The person begins to live in a constant state of scarcity, difficulty, and frustration. Not because the world is against them, but because their own internal system, their emotions, their thoughts, and their actions begin to reproduce what they believe. The mind, when conditioned to the negative, sees problems more than possibilities, closes itself off to new experiences, and generates behaviors that sabotage any attempt at change. Inner faith acts as a lens that colors everything we experience. When faced with the same situation, two people can have completely different reactions, depending on what they carry within themselves. One person sees a problem and feels defeated before even trying. Another sees the same problem as an opportunity for learning, growth, and transformation. The difference is not in what happens outside, but in what happens inside. And this inner strength has enough power to transform circumstances, rewrite stories, and break cycles that sometimes repeat themselves for generations. The human brain, combined with the power of faith, has an extraordinary ability to create realities. When you believe intensely in something, the entire nervous system aligns to make it real. Emotions organize themselves, the body responds, thoughts become more creative, and decisions become more assertive. This generates a sequence of events that, little by little, transforms the invisible of thought into the visible of concrete experience. This dynamic can be observed both in people who achieve great achievements and in those who remain stuck in the same patterns of failure and suffering. What we feed ourselves internally has a much greater impact than we usually imagine. If we repeat to ourselves every day that we are not capable, that we are not enough, that we do not deserve it, this message becomes a command that the brain accepts as truth. On the other hand, when we choose to feed thoughts of strength, worthiness, and possibility, even if the results are not yet visible, this energy begins to materialize in the form of opportunities, encounters, intuitions, and paths that were previously unnoticed. It is essential to understand that external reality is not something fixed, immutable, or separate from those who experience it. It is dynamic, plastic, and responds directly to the quality of internal vibration, thoughts, and emotions. This does not mean that all problems will disappear overnight, but it does mean that the way we deal with them changes completely. And when our internal posture changes, the external world begins to reorganize itself, making room for new experiences and transformations. Therefore, everything starts within. Real change does not come from the outside in, but from the inside out. What we believe, feel, and imagine constantly inevitably transforms into what we experience. Faith, when cultivated consciously, becomes the main tool for creating our own reality. It allows us to overcome the limits imposed by fear, doubt, and negativity, and make room for life to expand towards everything that is possible, as long as we truly believe. Genuine faith is not based on the simple hope that something will work out, but rather on the deep and unshakable conviction that it is already a reality, even if it is not yet visible to the eye. When one lives only in hope, there is room for doubt, for maybes, for uncertainty. Hope is like someone who wishes something but is not sure if it will happen. True faith, on the other hand, is an inner certainty, a security that is born within, that does not depend on external circumstances to remain firm. The conviction that comes from faith is not based on momentary conditions, nor on the limitations that apparent reality tries to impose. It goes beyond the limits of the visible and the logical, because it is based on a deeper understanding that everything that is believed intensely, felt truthfully, and supported by action, manifests itself in the right time. A person who has true faith does not live waiting for things to get better. They act, position themselves, and live as if what they desire is already happening. They do not ask, will it work out? But affirm within themselves, it is already working out, it is already mine, it is already happening. Having this conviction does not mean ignoring challenges or pretending that problems do not exist. It means looking at them without letting yourself be shaken, staying focused on what you believe, what you want, and the certainty that the process is moving forward. Those who live only in hope easily give in to discouragement when things do not turn out as expected. But those who live in genuine faith understand that difficulties are part of the journey, that they are adjustments, lessons, and necessary steps to get where you want to go. Faith as a conviction is not passive either. It requires coherence between thought, feeling, and action. It is not enough to simply say that you believe if, internally, you carry doubt, fear, and insecurity. True conviction is seen in the way you speak, how you walk, how you make decisions, and how you react when faced with obstacles. A person with true faith transmits strength, security, and a serenity that does not come from the external world, but from within. It is in this inner place that the creation of reality begins. When the mind is aligned with certainty and the heart beats at the same frequency, the universe begins to reorganize itself to bring into existence that which seemed impossible. The right doors open, the right people appear, the necessary resources flow, and situations begin to align. This is no coincidence. It is a natural consequence of those who live in the conviction of faith and not in the fragility of hope. Genuine faith does not negotiate with fear. It does not allow itself to be contaminated by the opinions of others, nor does it bow down to contrary appearances. It is an internal decision, a daily choice to keep one's gaze fixed on what one wishes to build, regardless of what one's physical eyes may be showing at that moment. And it is precisely this invisible but absolutely real force that transforms lives, changes stories, and breaks any limit that previously seemed insurmountable. While hope waits, faith builds. While hope watches, faith moves. While hope cheers, faith is already grateful, because it knows, feels, and believes that what is desired already exists in the realm of possibilities and is on its way to materializing. This is the power of a faith that is not based on uncertain desire, but on the absolute conviction that everything is possible for those who truly believe. Throughout history, there are countless examples of people who used faith as a creative force, not just in the religious sense, but as a deep conviction capable of transforming dreams into reality, overcoming challenges, and generating great changes in the world. These individuals believed in their visions, even when everything seemed impossible, and shaped reality from this inner conviction. A clear example is Thomas Edison. He believed deeply that he could create the electric light bulb, even when he failed more than 1,000 times. If he had lived only in hope, he would have given up after the first few failures. But his unshakable faith in the possibility of making real what did not exist made him persist until he succeeded. Edison said that each failure was just another step towards the solution. His conviction was not based on external evidence, but on the inner certainty that it was possible. Another striking example is Nelson Mandela. After being imprisoned for almost 3 decades, he could have lost hope, but he kept alive the conviction that his country could free itself from apartheid and live in equality. Even in prison, Mandela did not stop believing in what seemed impossible. His unshakable faith in freedom and justice was a creative force that later helped to completely transform the history of South Africa. Martin Luther King Jr. is also a symbol of creative faith. When he raised his voice for civil rights in the United States, he faced threats, persecution, and violence. Even so, he kept alive the conviction that one day people would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. His speech, "I Have a Dream," is the pure expression of faith as a creative force. He was not just wishing, he was affirming a reality that he deeply believed was possible, even if it did not yet exist. In science, Marie Curie also represents this force. At a time when women were almost completely excluded from academic circles, she remained firm in her conviction that she could contribute to science. She overcame prejudices, financial and structural difficulties, and discovered two chemical elements, polonium and radium, in addition to paving the way for research that would save millions of lives in the future. Her belief in her own potential and the importance of her work was the driving force that sustained her. In the business world, we can mention Steve Jobs. He had a clear vision that he could transform technology into something accessible, beautiful, and simple for people. Even though he was fired from the very company he founded, he maintained his conviction, continued creating and, later, returned to Apple to lead one of the greatest technological revolutions in modern history. His faith in that which did not yet exist was what materialized the products and innovations that are now part of the lives of billions of people. These examples show that faith, when genuine, is not a passive waiting, but an active, creative, and transformative force. These are people who did not allow themselves to be limited by what they saw around them, nor by circumstances. They were guided by their inner conviction, by the clarity of what they believed was possible, and this force shaped reality. Faith, in these cases, was not a religious belief, but a deep certainty in the ability to create, transform, and achieve that which seemed unattainable. The greatest enemies of faith are not, in most cases, external factors, but rather internal elements that arise in people's minds and hearts, undermining their ability to believe, persist, and create their own reality. They act silently, often disguised as prudence, logic, or realism, but in reality they are blocks that weaken the connection with inner conviction. One of the main enemies of faith is doubt. Doubt is not simply questioning, but it is that constant feeling that calls into question one's own ability, one's own worthiness, and even the possibility of achievement. When doubt sets in, the mind begins to create arguments to justify why something will not work out, causing the person to become paralyzed, give up, or weaken their own creative energy. Another powerful enemy is fear. The fear of failing, of being judged, of not being capable, or of leaving one's comfort zone. Fear has the power to stifle dreams before they even manifest. It generates negative thoughts, creates failure scenarios, and makes people cling more to the security of the known than to the possibility of the new. Conformity also presents itself as a great obstacle. When someone believes that things are as they are and that they cannot be changed, they give up their creative power and surrender to mediocrity. Conformity kills faith, because it eliminates the search for transformation, evolution, and fulfillment. External influence, when poorly filtered, also becomes an enemy of faith. Negative opinions, destructive criticism, other people's pessimism, and toxic environments undermine confidence. How many ideas, projects, and dreams have been abandoned simply because someone close to us said, "This won't work, you can't do it," or "No one has ever done it"? Impatience is another silent saboteur. Having faith also requires understanding that there is a time for gestation, maturation, and construction. Those who want immediate results often give up halfway, believing that the lack of quick results is a sign of failure, when in fact it is part of the process. Finally, self-sabotage emerges as one of the worst enemies. It manifests itself in unconscious behaviors, such as procrastination, self-deprecation, constant comparisons with others, and excessive focus on one's own flaws. The person, without realizing it, feeds thoughts that erode their self-confidence and, consequently, their faith. These enemies do not disappear completely, but they can be faced, reinterpreted, and overcome. Awareness of their existence is already a powerful step. True faith is not the absence of fear or doubt, but the decision not to let yourself be dominated by them, to continue believing, even when logic screams otherwise. The environment exerts a direct and often silent influence on a person's faith. This is not limited to the physical space, but also to the people, conversations, collective habits, and emotional energy that circulates around. Everything that is consumed daily, whether in words, images, sounds, or interactions, nourishes or weakens the inner conviction, shaping thoughts, feelings, and, consequently, the reality that is created. Being surrounded by negative people who cultivate limiting beliefs, pessimism, and disbelief has a contaminating effect. Even without realizing it, the mind begins to absorb those ideas, question its own possibilities, and, little by little, doubt creeps in. Conversations begin to revolve around difficulties, failures, limitations, and fears, creating a mental field where faith seems naive, distant, or even impossible to sustain. Likewise, environments where chaos, disorder, stress, or excessive competition reign also drain vital energy. The mind needs clarity, focus, and balance to nurture genuine faith, and emotionally polluted environments generate exactly the opposite: anxiety, insecurity, and mental confusion. On the other hand, when one consciously chooses to be in environments that stimulate growth, expansion, the exchange of positive ideas, and the elevation of consciousness, faith is strengthened. Being around people who believe, who seek, who inspire, who challenge their own limits and who share achievements sparks the internal memory that it is also possible. Inspiration becomes daily nourishment and conviction grows, becoming stronger than any internal resistance. In addition to people and conversations, the environment also includes the content that is consumed. Reading, listening, watching and learning about uplifting topics that stimulate a mindset of abundance, overcoming, self-confidence and spirituality nourishes the mind and reinforces the belief in one's own capabilities and the power to co-create one's own life. Therefore, choosing where to be, who to be with and what to feed within one's own mind is not a detail. It is a strategic decision, fundamental for those who wish to strengthen their faith, their vision of the future and their ability to transform reality. Faith does not grow by chance. It needs to be cultivated, cared for and protected from the influences that constantly try to disconnect it from its creative center. The principle of active faith, from both a biblical and philosophical perspective, is deeply rooted in the idea that faith is not a passive state of waiting, but a dynamic, practical, and transformative force. In the Bible, faith is constantly associated with action, obedience, and the materialization of convictions in the physical world. It is not enough to simply believe in an abstract way. It is necessary to manifest this belief through actions consistent with what one believes. Throughout the scriptures, we see that the greatest examples of faith are not from people who simply waited for miracles to happen, but from men and women who acted, walked, faced challenges, made bold decisions and, often, went against human logic, guided only by the conviction of something that was not yet seen, but that was already real within them. Hebrews 11 is an entire chapter dedicated to this concept, showing that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. This conviction generates movement, generates works, generates transformation. Philosophically, active faith also appears as a principle linked to self-confidence, the ability to project into the world what one visualizes internally. Philosophers such as William James, the father of pragmatism, argued that belief has practical power and that what a person deeply believes directly influences their actions and, consequently, their results. For him, belief is a force that shapes experience. Kierkegaard, the father of existentialism, also approached faith as a leap, not an irrational leap, but a bold movement towards the unknown, where security is replaced by total surrender to something greater, be it God or a purpose. In both the biblical and philosophical view, active faith requires commitment, mental discipline, and alignment between thought, word, and action. It is the opposite of passive faith, which expects something external to happen without any effort or internal change. The principle is clear. Those who believe, act as those who already have it. Those who believe, speak, think, behave, and make decisions in line with the reality they wish to materialize, even if their physical senses do not yet confirm it. This principle breaks with the idea of faith as simple hope. It becomes an existential stance, a path of creation, where the invisible is brought to the visible through the coherence between belief and action. It is this faith that moves mountains, transforms lives and changes destinies, both on the spiritual and earthly planes. If you enjoyed this reflection on how life is created from the inside out, don't forget to leave a comment, like the video, subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and share it with anyone you think could also benefit from this message. Your participation is very important.